Hello, and welcome to another Thursday episode of the 905 Roundup. My name is Roland Tanner,
I am Joel McLeod.
and we have a bevy of stories from around the 905 and possibly further afield. We'll see how we're doing. um, and starting off with a story that the TVO published, kind of pointing out that despite all the changes in the law and everything that's been done to help developers in recent months and years, housing numbers are kind of plummeting in Ontario right now, in terms of new builds. So what the hell is this about, Joel?
I think you pretty much summed it up right there. Like if you I'll post a link to the article in the show notes. Give credit where credit's due. But John Michael McGrath of TVO wrote a pretty good art analysis op-ed. Just the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation released their seasonally adjusted monthly estimate of housing starts for this year, and basically 31%. We're seeing a drop of 31% in Ontario overall. Toronto is down 52. We looked at the numbers ourselves, looking for more specific 905 numbers. The besides St. Catharines, Niagara, it's up 29, I believe. But Hamilton's only up 7. Again, those aren't big. Those aren't life-saving numbers there, folks. That's not really a huge endorsement of this plan. I guess it came down to, we've been talking about Bill 23 on this podcast quite a lot, mostly from the Greenbelt angle and how it was carving up the Greenbelt to open land up for development, and it did. But we're not, that there wasn't a huge army of trucks and bulldozers to go in there and start digging holes for foundations and getting homes and whatnot done in there. Bill 23 was supposed to be like, putting the lead foot on the gas pedal of development in this province. It was going to release all the red tape. It was going to open up all the bureaucracy that was supposedly holding back development in this province and giving the developers a green light to go and build. And they are not. It's a problem because we've had a friend of the podcast, Mike Moffat, on some time ago to talk about the housing crisis. And basically we are in a supply problem. The demand is there, but the supply is not. We're woefully behind in what we need to be at the moment, as well as what we're StatScan and trend lines are anticipating we're going to need for the influx of people coming our way in the next 5 to 10 years. Where are we going to, what Mike Moffat in the article, Mike Moffat is quoted as saying, basically, we need to build a new home, detached house, condo, a rental, whatever it is. We need to build one basically every minute for a decade to meet the federal targets that they've laid out. Provincial targets are a bit more modest, but either way, I mean, that's a huge undertaking that we've laid out in front of us. And quite frankly, Bill 23 apparently does not seem to be holding its weight in terms of activating that plan.
Yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, you should point out that these are the numbers that the TVO article talks about. They were talking kind of about month-on-month numbers, and my initial reaction was like, well, you can't read a whole lot into month-on-month numbers. But when you look at the seasonally adjusted numbers, which take into account things like, December has all kinds of holidays and isn't necessarily the best month to start things, and when you take all that into account, the numbers are actually clearer, and that is that Ontario is not seeing any uptick in new housing starts. It's actually seeing a significant downtick. And that compares with, well, basically, it's pretty bad news right across Canada. But Ontario is among the worst, and the only provinces that are seeing any kind of uptick in new housing builds are Quebec, which has seen a 27% uptick, and Alberta, which has seen 5%, which is kind of neither here nor there in a smaller province. So yeah, just talk about 905 numbers. Brantford is one of the ones that they detail, and Brantford has seen a 22% drop since last year. Um, you know, as I
Well,
say, they don't have too many 905 cities listed
but
specifically,
they quote Toronto, and I'm going to assume that Toronto would include like Mississauga and Brampton, in the periphery in there, and they're down 52%
mhm.
uh in the year, the previous year. This, I mean, this comes down to like just a failure of imagination in this. And this is something that you and I have talked about many, many times on this podcast, is that all that Bill 23 did, all the talk that this government has done about opening up for development, hasn't been to put any pressure on the building aspect. It's been just basically allowing the profit margin to grow for developers based on costs. Now, the reason why we aren't seeing any new builds is because these developers are sitting on this land. They own the land. They own the land. The land has been approved. It's ready to go. They're sitting on it because the market is not right. The market is not in their favor. They cannot maximize that profitability right now in the market. With interest rates being what they are, I mean, we're all seeing that at the grocery store. We all know the interest rates are just, they're hurting everyone, including us and including those developers. The building cost of those houses has gone up, and that therefore also mortgage rates have gone up, which means that people are not willing to take out bigger and bigger mortgages to buy their mansions now in the sprawl, which means again that profit margin shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. These developers, as it is right now, the current status quo, will sit on this land for the next 4, 5, 10 years, 15 years, until market forces allow that profit margin to widen to, I think that they're waiting for it to return to what it was pre-COVID,
Yeah, I
the
mean
heyday of development.
the the Ontario government, in its infinite stupidity, I was going to say wisdom. Let's not even bother with that. Has gone about trying to fix a problem with entirely the wrong solution. The solution was never that developers couldn't build. Is that it's that they don't build for a variety of reasons, primarily being about making sure that you don't oversupply and bring prices down. Um, it this is a market thing where all the Ontario government has done is basically created a massive multi-billion-dollar subsidy to the development industry that was already building as much as it wanted to build, which is actually, like you say, sitting on thousands and thousands and thousands of planning approvals, not applications, approvals. They've got everything they need to build, and they don't build. And those approvals just sit there year after year doing nothing, and they wait for the right moment. The right moment has nothing to do with demand. It has everything to do with getting the best possible price. Now, that's fine. Again, I'm not actually criticizing developers for doing what makes sense for their business. It's down to the province to have a little bit of insight into that, and to use its powers to put pressure on the development industry to build now and not down the road. And it could have done that, but of course it didn't, because the developers wouldn't like that.
Well, I mean, I think another, like, if we're going to talk solutions to this, there are two right off the top of my head that I could think the government could do. They won't, but they could. One is, and this is something that you've brought up many times, is build the housing ourselves through socialized, subsidized housing, allowing the various municipalities, not just in the 905, but across Ontario, to build. If they don't already have one, to incorporate a housing corporation, a publicly owned, publicly subsidized housing corporation that could go in, buy up this land, buy up property, own it, develop it, rent it out at income adjusted rents. But the idea is just building and putting more housing on the market at affordable rates, at an offer profit rates. That's one. The second one is because we're racing against the clock. We're trying to build like 1.5 million homes in 10 years time. That's a huge goal to achieve, folks. So we need to get like every arrow in our quiver needs to be notched and ready to go. So the socialized housing is one. The second is I believe like a vacancy tax. And by that, allowing municipalities to set a rate of maybe 3 to 5 times what a land is valued at. And if it is an unoccupied unit, an unoccupied house or a condo unit or whatever have you, you tax the landlord at 5 times the property value. If it's a vacant lot, same deal. If it's a lot that has been approved for development, and they're just sitting on it waiting for the right time, we make the right time now because we tax them at 5 times that property tax, and we do not release that property tax until the last unit is sold.
And you may not even need to go that far. You could just expire the damn approvals. The fact is that
I'm also thinking that a lot of these municipalities don't have any development fees anymore to take.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's yeah. No,
but you're right. You're right.
I think that would be. I think there's definitely things that could be done in that area that would concentrate developers' minds. But certainly, you know, I can mention just from my experience in Burlington, I can think of 2 or 3 developments off the top of my head that were approved a very long time ago. One of them came up before council maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because it had been the staff in the planning department had been kind of, you know, each time the developer asked, they just extended the approval and said, yeah, no worries. And after the change of council in 2018, one of the councillors, I believe it was, I could be speaking out of turn here, but I believe it was, well, I don't know who it was, so I'm going to not say, but basically people woke up and said, hang on a minute, we don't have to be renewing this approval and just waiving all these fees that we could be asking this developer to give. Of course, all hell broke loose at that point. I mean,
but here's the thing: the Bill 23 got rid of all those development charges that were going into city coffers. That's off the table now. Maybe this is, I mean, hint, if you're a city councilor and you're listening to this podcast, that might be a good tool to have to just at least get some money into the public coffers. If you just start, when these things come up for, when these approvals expire.
I mean, the shame of it is, I mean, there are still development fees. They're just much less. Right. It's been reduced greatly, and the timeline's been shortened. And the last thing that any planning department wants to do is repeat work that they've already done. So they're inclined to say, yeah, just have your renewal. Just leave me alone. We're busy enough already. Just renew your approval. But absolutely the way it should go is like, okay, well, you didn't build. You said you were going to build. You didn't build. And also, and again, I could point to individual developments. There's a certain development in Burlington that is very well known where the developer went back on their word to build various healthcare related elements into a building. None of that was built. The building took way too long to develop. Things did not happen that were promised. For some reason, the city is not allowed to then say, like, hey, you guys, when you come and get your next, ask for your next approval, we're going to hold you to account for what you did the last time. They're not allowed, as I understand it, they're really not allowed to kind of do that. It's like, well, why the hell not? They were messed around by Company X, who shall remain nameless. But I know that Company X had a whole bunch of other developments that it was having built. It's like, oh, you can just, you lied, basically. We're not allowed to make you pay for that. I mean, it's all part of the mess of development in Ontario. But I mean, there are all kinds of ways to focus developers' minds on actually building. But again, thinking of Burlington, the new hotel opened a couple of years ago. That was approved in the mid 1990s.
Right.
It's finally built and completed just in the last few years.
during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the thing is like this Bill 23 was supposed the idea was, and again, and we're having I think we're even touching upon the federal scene with Pierre Poilievre saying, oh, the gatekeepers are prohibiting development being built across Canada. Again, this isn't a 905 centric problem. This is nationwide, but we've just identified this has nothing to do with municipal or provincial planning. The Ontario government has just proven that they Bill 23 supposedly took all the restraints off. It was put the hammer down on the pedal, and we're going to build all the development that we need. And this is not the case. The gatekeeper are the developers. And again, I can't fault them because the current system says, well, no, it doesn't make sense for them to maximize their profits right now. Yeah, their profits they're not going to be as well as they were before.
And there was this myth on both sides of the political debate, both on the right and the left, that what was stopping development were these bloody NIMBYs who just stood in the way of everything. And really, I've asked people over the years, it's like, show me the development that was stopped by your NIMBYs. Show me. They may have kicked up a fuss. They may have come down to council. They may have shouted and screamed about some development they didn't like. It happens. You see it all the time. People object to all kinds of things. That's their right. Show me where it actually worked and stopped development, and I'll sit up and listen. Fact is, never. Certainly not. Again, in Burlington had this whole NIMBY revolution, so called. Show me what development stopped as a result of it. I can't think of one.
But here's like this is something I've talked with you about kind of offline. I was that like the urgency to build is I think we need a reshape of the entire development portfolio. And here's how I would rephrase it. Every city is able to fill in that middle density. Right now, it's pretty much you either have sprawl or high rises. Those are your two options as it pretty much is laid out in our development plans in this province. I think we need, you and I have talked, we need that middle density. We need that a variety of options, 8-story buildings, single homes. You can have the condo towers, everything in between. Tell the cities, design a plan where you allow that middle density to build, to hit the targets that the province hands down, a la the Places to Grow Act. City has 1 year to come up with that plan. That plan is approved. It's approved by the minister. That's the plan on the record. Do away with the OLT. If a developer brings in a proposal to develop something in the city within that allotted plan, it is automatically approved. There is no if, ands, or buts. There's no going to council. There's no town hall, whatever. If they meet the plan, the agreed to plan by that city, it is automatically approved. If that developer says, well, I want to build bigger, taller, higher, gold-plated everything, whatever, fine. You go to council and you plead your case. Council has the final say.
But that's how it works now. That's the system as it is envisaged now. Like there is as of right development. Anything in an official plan, anything within the fact is that nothing ever was within the official plan.
But the problem is the official plan.
Everything is appealed.
But the problem is, well, that's the thing, is we don't allow the appeal. But the other thing is the official plan either only allows for sprawl. So you're building constant single detached homes, or you're building 60-story condo towers to fill the targets. And that's where you need to allow the middle density. Therefore, a new plan that allows that middle density.
To give Doug Ford, to give the province some credit where it's due, there is, amongst all the other stuff that's happened, basically for the last 20 years, successive governments have tried to stop sprawl, including the PCs in their first term. And now they've thrown that all out of the window, and it's just build everywhere. We don't care.
Yeah.
But there is within the latest legislation stuff that does do positive things with regard to that middle density. But again, the irony is that that's going to take a while to come through because it's going to be much more piecemeal. And the big developers aren't interested in it. They don't want to be building a 5-story apartment block. They want to be building a 40-story condo block, or they want to be sprawling in greenfield. So yeah, there was actually some positive stuff there. It's been buried under all the stuff about the green belt and all the other outrageous attacks on everything. But there are some positive things there, but it's going to depend on small and independent, people who own a small plot of land who want to, rather than putting up a McMansion, put up a small apartment building. But that stuff takes time. And the headline stuff that this is a small print in the legislation compared with the other stuff that's meant to allow the developers to just build.
Well, let's take a pause on that and come back for our next bit. And we're back. So we talked about development as per usual on this podcast, but we do want to follow up on a story that we talked about a couple weeks ago, which it made all the headlines in the province, and that was not our story, but the letter that Kate Graham, who we had on a few weeks ago, wrote to Mike Schreiner, basically asking him to quit his job as the Green Party leader and run for the Ontario Liberal Party to become their leader for the next foreseeable future. We were all waiting with bated breath as Mike hemmed and hummed and wrung his hands and talked to people and asked away and made his decision. He finally made his decision and he released his statement, basically saying, "No thanks, I'm okay where I am."
I'm surprised it took this long. I'm very surprised. Suggests he thought about it, and maybe thought about it long enough to sound out Liberal members to see who would be willing to support him. And I guess the answer came back, not enough. What do we think about this story now, a few weeks later? I mean, it's an odd one. It's not one that my Shiner took so long to reply. I think it speaks to how small the Green Party of Ontario is, that he could do that. No disrespect to the Green Party of Ontario, but it kind of is Mike Schreiner to a degree, to a significant degree. I can't think of a situation in which a leader of another party would be able to just sort of sit and twiddle their thumbs and have a good old think about something like that for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Like I say, he must have been spending the time doing something other than speaking to his family. I suspect it would be sounding out people to see how much support he had, and the answer was not enough.
I don't think he actually did any homework on this at all. If I was Mike Schreiner, I'm like, I know what my decision is, but I'll let them sit on it. My bet is Mike Schreiner, as soon as he got the offer, he said, "No, I'm not leaving." But what do you do? Well, I'll let it sit and stew on it. Here's the thing. And that's why Mike Schreiner is actually a pretty smart guy, and he's a smart politician in my book for this. So he sits on his opinion, and he says, "I'm talking it over. I'll think it over. I'll give it a good honest thought over it." What happens? All those liberals that look what happened after that letter came out. The Liberal Party just started. It was infighting all over again. Longstanding liberals, former MPPs, current leadership contestants, former staffers, former volunteers, former fundraisers, all were coming out saying, "This is a horrible idea. Who are these guys to invite Mike Schreiner to lead us? We need to rebuild. We need this." And it was just a panicked flurry of emotion from the Ontario Liberal Party. I was Mike Trine, I would have just sat back and watched it. You're like, who knows? Maybe you have the third party in the Ontario legislature tear itself apart even more, do more damage to itself in the meantime. And he just sits on his hands, cracks open a beer, watches the show, and he comes back. How long has it been since, a couple of weeks since that letter? And he comes back and says, "Yeah, I'm content where I am." Right. And what do you have? So you have
maybe I don't actually think that's what he's done.
I think that's what's happened though.
I think it's already yesterday's chip papers, really. But I do think that this event was very divisive amongst former allies in the party. There were people. I don't think it's well established. Let's put it that way. That there were people within the OLP who were extremely put out by this, by the way that this was done, and I think it was unwise ultimately, and I think Kate Graham maybe came to feel it was unwise. She kind of apologized on our podcast.
I was going to say, like, I kind of
why would you do that if it was a great idea?
Well, I don't want to put words in her mouth.
No,
but I'm going to invite our listeners, go back, re-listen to that episode if you haven't already.
That's a very good way to put it, Joe. Go back and listen again. Did she apologize? Did she not?
I don't know if it's an apology, but I kind of get the sense that there's a bit of regret, that I wasn't anticipating this to be the response that we were going to get when we put this out there. Because there was not a huge consensus of like, oh, this is an interesting out there idea. Let's entertain this for a little bit. From longstanding Liberals, many Liberal leadership contestants, we were seeing like Nate Erskine Smith, I know, put out a tweet immediately just saying like, no, we're going to fix the party ourselves. We need to rebuild ourselves. We don't need an outsider to come in and do it for us. That sentiment was kind of going around a lot of Liberals. Like there's.
It was, but we have to say, the names on that list were
impressive. Oh yeah.
It's like
Deb Matthews, Greg Sobrero.
Other than the Premier, no one was bigger under the previous government than Deb Matthews. Greg Sobrero is like a titan of the party.
Yeah.
Whether you think he's overstayed his welcome is another story. The man built Dalton McGuinty's government. Whatever success they had during the first decade of the 21st century is in large part down to Greg Sobrero. Pat Sobrero, no relation, I believe. No. Also very, very, very well known within the party. They were big names, and Kate Graham's kept taking the flack for this. It's like Kate Graham put an idea out there, and maybe the wiser heads should have prevailed and said, well, you know what, maybe we don't want to be sticking our name on this. We do this the old school way. We have these conversations quietly and out of the media spotlight. And I think maybe that's what should have happened. I think this will blow over. It's done now. I don't think it's. It will
blow over, but it has done something that I didn't anticipate. It's renewed focus on the Ontario Liberal leadership race.
Yeah, earlier than anticipated, and with more kind of interest than anticipated.
It forced us, like you and I have been approached by a number of leadership contestants to say, hey, can we come on the podcast to talk? And we've said no, not until the rules are officially established and we actually know, like, we have actual people officially declaring, not just rumors. When that happens, we might do a couple episodes on the leadership race there. That being said, this forced our hand to say, well, we got to talk about this. This is tearing up the news politically. It put the Ontario Liberal leadership race back on the map, in my opinion. It's something that if you're interested in politics, you're now talking again about who might take over the reins on the Ontario Liberal Party, and would they have the strategic know-how and the fortitude to rebuild that party and go after Doug Ford? I bring this up because if I were Merritt Stiles in the NDP, I'd be a little on the edge of my seat now, because the NDP said, no, we're not going to go with a leadership race. We're not going to go and have that debate of ideas. We're now going to go and just coronate you like the Queen and put you on the seat of power. Leadership races matter, and they matter because they get you in front of the crowd. They get you in front of an audience. The Liberal Party needs to re-energize. They need to get new ideas and new people in there. This might do it. It might not. It might blow up in all of our faces, and this could be the death knell of the Liberal Party. It could be, but it could have the opposite. It could start a fire with new names, new blood, new ideas coming in, new supporters, new sources of fundraising, all that stuff, which is great for a party. And if I was the NDP, I'd be a little nervous because nobody's paying attention to the NDP these days. And for it being the opposition, that's alarming.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect we know who's going to run. I mean, the names are being rumored.
Yeah.
Whether they all end up running, I don't know. I think we can assume that. I mean, these names are probably not that familiar to the general public, but they'll be familiar to the membership, such as it is. Yasser Naqvi was a very well liked former party president.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can assume he's probably going to run. He's doing fundraisers and things at the moment. Mitzi Hunter, if she doesn't run for mayor of Toronto, is someone that's just perennially talked about. Nate Erskine Smith, I don't know much about him because I tune out federal politics so much, but obviously has made quite a name for himself.
He's made a name for himself as being the outsider and kind of a rebel, and he's gone kind of at odds with the Trudeau government, which I think that's an interesting line on your resume to put on for a leader of the provincial Liberals, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
But there's also Jeff Lehman up in Barrie has been touted as a potential. He was a former candidate, and Ted Sue out in Kingston is talked about running. So I mean, there's if all or some of those people do throw their hat in the ring and make a run for it, it's going to garner a lot more attention, and especially coming off this letter. There's going to be attention on these individuals to how they're going to rebuild the party.
And I would say, whatever you're feeling, whatever your Yasser Naqvi's like the real deal. Mitzi Hunter is the real deal. Nate Erskine Smith is the real deal. These are people who are capable of running a leadership campaign and actually, being of interest. And stealing some headlines and saying some interesting things, I would say, well, I don't really know Nate Erskine Smith, I have to say. I mean, become familiar with him, I'm sure, if he chooses to run. But yeah, I mean, it does come back to the thing of the NDP kind of giving up an opportunity to steal a bunch of headlines, and I was pretty critical. I mean, nothing that I've tweeted in recent months has got anything like the number of retweets that a comment I made of like, what the hell are you guys doing on the weekend that the story came out about, stag and doe,
yeah,
whether spelt DOE or DOUGH. What the hell are you guys doing when, your last comment was on Friday, it's now Monday lunchtime, and you haven't said diddly squat since? And there were a few, it was a press release.
Apparently Merritt Stiles has filed a request with the Integrity Commissioner to look into what happened there. And that's all well and good, but really you're going to wait until the Integrity Commissioner, who in my mind is highly compromised on this topic to begin with, is going to come out with a report. Like, no, you make it work now. Like you put it in front of every reporter that you can. You like, my God, like, just how is this?
Well, you don't wait for the report of an integrity commissioner whose first reaction was, "Oh no, everything's fine, everything's
Right.
fine." Yeah. I mean, I don't think he said you're cleared 1000% because he's not that much of a moron. Only morons say 1000%. But nevertheless, he did say, "Oh no, well, if you say it's fine, which is basically all he can do.
Right.
So we don't really have much faith in that system to produce any.
It doesn't matter if there's a criminality wrong here or not. It's politics. It's the appearance of this is not right. He was getting envelopes of cash from developers in the backyard. Like, why is everybody not treating this like the opening scene of The Godfather? I have said this a million times. Like, why is this every politician not calling him Ford Corleone right now? Like, why? Like, I don't. This is, as we said earlier, this is manna from heaven. If you're in politics, if you're in the opposition,
it's an absolute gift from the gods.
And you're sitting there going, "Oh no, we have to wait for the integrity commissioner to do like." No, we know exactly what happened. We know exactly what happened.
Boris
here.
Johnson was brought down by a couple of parties. No money changed hands. He just had parties.
Yes.
In a hypocritical, idiotic way that was typical of Johnson. That brought him down because the press didn't let go, the opposition didn't let go. They went on and on and on. They called the police in, they did, but they went on and on and on and on about it. This isn't even getting on the front page of the Star a day after it came out. Partly because of the bloody John Tory story.
You know what?
But partly because
said it. We've read on Merit Styles onto this podcast before. The offer is still there. If you want to come on and tell us what you know or what you're concerned about with this Stag and Doe party, we will give you half an hour. You have a half hour on this podcast to talk it out, and we will ask you the questions that everyone is concerned about. You know, you've got a platform right here. The offer has been standing for 2 weeks now. We've put the invite out to your office. If you're listening, or somebody in the NDP is listening, the offer the offer will be open forever. You're always welcome on this podcast.
And we had the former leader of the Ontario Liberals came on. We had the leader of the Greens. PCs never speak to us. I don't see any reason why the NDP shouldn't come on. It's like,
you're not scared like a conservative, are you, NDP? Come on.
I mean, it's like, we will give, and I promise this to the Conservatives too, we will give anybody who comes into the show a fair crack at having their say. And yeah, we'll ask questions and we'll challenge it, but it will be done fairly with everybody. And clearly we are a progressive podcast, and we've said it again and again. We just want the progressives to do well. We are not aligned with any party, but if you think we're talking garbage by saying you're not doing something that or we're not giving you credit for things that you are doing, come on and tell us, point out the error of our ways, for goodness sake. And there are few enough avenues. It's very difficult, even at a provincial level, to get in the media. Why would you not take advantage of the media that's out there that will give you like 30 minutes of airtime?
Nobody's going to give you 30 minutes. No one.
Yeah.
At the best, you'll get 30 seconds. We'll give you half an hour. So don't just take up the offer like that. I don't know, or don't. It doesn't stress it. It doesn't stress us out at all.
Come on and call us jackasses for half an hour.
Fuck! I'll drink to that.
Yeah, it would be richly deserved, I'm sure. But
call us every day.
I'm sure people will tune in to listen.
I would love to hear. Yeah, I would love to hear that. All right, I think on that we should, on that cheery note and that cheerful invite, let's call it a day on this one. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Right.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.